Ta-da! Welcome, everybody. It's really, really good to see you, and you're very welcome, and we're glad you're here today. I am Trish Sears. I am your host for In Conversation with End of Life Specialists. I'm a certified end of life doula and a death literacy specialist. I'm also certified by UVM as a companion animal end of life doula. My passion is proactive planning end of life care. And so we've been having these conversations with end of life specialists for almost a year now. It was in last November we started with Barbara Becker. And they're uploaded to, as I mentioned earlier, the YouTube playlist. And you can find the link to that and more on my link tree. And I'll put that in my follow-up email to you. Next month, our guest will be Lori Rizzo, who will share her experiences and learnings about planning end-of-life care for people with dementia. In December, Gabby of the Hospice Heart Facebook page and blog will be joining us for a deeper dive into starting the question. And I'll put a link to her book in my follow-up email. I give it out all the time, so it's really, really, really good. You also have received information that I postponed the 6-week workshop, A Guide to Living Fully and Dying Prepared, that was supposed to start next week, and I'm postponing it until spring. So if you'd like to be the first to know when that registration is open, you can add your name to the wait list, and I'll put that link in the follow-up email. And at last, I've developed a guide to the 5 essential questions, and I also just finished developing and making available a brand new legacy leadership audit, which you can take a look at on Linktree. So without much more ado, I am going to ask Lindsey to introduce herself, and we'll get started in learning more about green burial. It's become more and more apparent that people are just becoming aware that they have choices. And as far as, what happens with the disposition of their body after they die. So Lindsey's going to enlighten us, and Margot and Kathy, she even did a little bit of homework on Texas and New York to see, point you in the direction of more information. Hey, Lindsey, welcome.
Thank you
Hi,
so
Holly.
much,
Thank you.
Trish. Yeah, thank you so much and welcome everybody. I'm thrilled you're here. Anytime I get to speak with anyone about thinking ahead, planning, I love that Trish has this proactive approach to so you can live fully. And I want people to be aware that they have often a lot more choices than they realize for end of life. With their care, the care of their body, what happens to them afterwards, and fully like entering into planning, fully aware of things like, doing homework on the costs. A lot of people, I think, don't realize what it's going to cost them for that traditional, I shouldn't say traditional, I should say conventional burial. And things that reflect their values and wishes. So I don't think that there's any one right way to go about end of life planning and disposition planning. But I think it's really important to look at all the options and make choices that reflect your values. So I'm an end of life doula. I live up a town over from Trish, and we have such a beautiful relationship. Colleague relationship and being able to pass information and clients and referrals and information back and forth. It's been wonderful having community so close by. Some other people I work with, are all spread out all over the US. Um, I did my end of life doula certification at UVM, just as Trish did. I also am a lifelong musician. I have a master's degree in music, and a lot of people ask, well, what led you into end of life doula work? And it was really being able to do bedside music for people and realizing how meaningful and special that had felt in my life and wanting to do more of that. Um, I've done some other trainings to have complementary modalities to offer people like Reiki, essential oils, herbal supports. But a big part of my life has been thinking about my relationship with the earth and with the land, and whether it's buying groceries or the products that I put on my body now. So I want that same thing, reflected in my end of life choices. Um, I've also seen people in my family with sudden deaths that funeral poverty has really hit them hard, and they didn't know their options. And so that made me feel, more passionate about delving into this. Many of you that are in Vermont may be familiar with Vermont Forest Cemetery and Michelle Achyavati. She's been going around showing a short documentary called From Earth to Earth. She's a wonderful mentor and friend of mine, and I, I love learning from her too. And her natural burial options. She likes to say natural because green burial is a larger umbrella that I'll talk about. But she she's really moved the cause forward in Vermont on a lot of levels, and I love learning from her. So if you get a chance to see that documentary or you get a chance to go see the Vermont Forest Cemetery, I highly recommend. It's open for anyone to walk on the trails, dawn to dusk. So if you have a day that you're over there, they also give tours. So green burial, big umbrella that covers a lot of different options. And some of you live in other states, and you may or may not have a green cemetery near you. So a green burial cemetery might be hybrid. It might have a traditional or conventional, I should say, conventional cemetery that has concrete vaults and caskets for people. But then some cemeteries now are starting to open up green burial grounds that they don't require a concrete vault. The concrete vaults really are for the sake of the lawnmower. There's not going to be a giant gaping hole. All the soil that's been displaced and is a mound after someone is buried eventually settles. But it's not like there's going to be a giant hole in the ground. They try to keep it more flat for ease of if it's a cemetery that's being mowed. And a lot of cemeteries spray chemicals too to keep the weeds and keep it looking manicured. And so more and more cemeteries are designating areas if they've got the space that they let it be natural. They don't do the mowing. There are other types of cemeteries. So I mentioned the forest cemetery, which literally is a forest, and they really try to be in relationship with and preserving the forest. There's conservation burial grounds that have a formal conservation easement. So there's a plan to help all the wildlife and all the plant life in that area. And the land has been, protected from development. And then, yeah, I mentioned these hybrid cemeteries. So that's one option in the green burial world, looking for a place like that. Different types of lands. And then in the green burial movement, there's some new things afoot. Some of you may have heard of aquamation or it's alkaline hydrolysis or water cremation. These are all terms, and sometimes people get excited. And yes, it is better than standard cremation for because you're not putting all the particulates into the air, and um, standard cremation takes an immense amount of energy for a long time, an immense amount of heat to cremate a person's body. And so the alkaline hydrolysis is a extremely alkaline solution that's put into a tank with your body, and but there's still heat and pressure, and so there is a carbon footprint to make those tanks and to power, the amount of water it uses and to create the heat and the pressure. But it's a better it's like one of those middle ground options, and I think for places that are very high density populations, that could be a good option. Here in Vermont, we do have a lot of beautiful land, so some things are more possible. So some of it is looking at what are the options in your area. Aquamation is not legal in every state. I don't have the list in my head of who is allowing it and who isn't. I think it is allowed in Vermont now, and there may be a company, but there are. It really started over on the West Coast, and so there's that. There's also a company also on the West Coast that does. Trying to remember what they call themselves, Terramation. It's like Recompose is one of the company's names, and I've seen Terramation as well. And there are these little pods. So again, for a dense city area where, here, Mother Nature, the soil is going to decompose your body with all the microbes and all the bugs, and it happens easily without having to do anything. But they have these places in some of the big cities where you can choose to be composted. So a special pod with various types of soil substrates, and so they then return your body, as a thing of soil to the family. So those are some options available in some areas, not all areas. And if you don't have space or land, there's not a green cemetery near you, that can be an option. I've also had people in my workshop. So I go around and I teach workshops on green burial options and walk people through the planning process and asking questions and thinking about it along the way. And several times in my workshops, I have had people ask, what if I don't want to be under the ground? I don't want to be cremated, but I don't want to be under the ground. Is there an option for me to be just above ground, feeding nature and returning to the earth in that way? And so there are, um, ooh, the word's going to fly right out of my head right now. Um, Forensic labs, forensic body farms, we call them. So that takes a little more planning, but I've met a few people that really feel strongly in that direction. And so what they're looking at is needing to plan after they pass, which forensic site would they want to go to? There's a few scattered around, but you're looking at the transportation of the body there. And so sometimes that cost can be, pretty hefty. Just within Vermont, I've planned for some people, that we're interested in. They live in one place, but they want to donate to the university for science. And, what a funeral director charges varies greatly from funeral home to funeral home, but there is sometimes a very significant cost, even just for, a 30-minute drive, like from our capital up. Um, I've had people that want to do green burial that want to donate to science, but they don't realize that when you donate, it's a whole body donation. You're going to be embalmed. And afterwards, they tend to use your body for 2 to 3 years. And afterwards, you're cremated and returned to your family. So again, it's just weighing your options of where are your values, what are your wishes. So
And the other thing about,
mhm.
that somebody mentioned, and I hadn't thought about it, was if when you donate your body, they have to come in pretty quickly.
Yes,
So,
yes.
and so it's if you were hoping to have some sacred time with your person after death,
Mm.
just to be aware that, the protocol is that, you're letting them know they're getting there ASAP to do the needful, like you were just saying,
Mhm.
Lindsay.
Yeah. I've looked at different programs. Some say within 24 hours, some say within 48 hours. So you have to look at, if that's something you feel strongly about, making a anatomical gift, the anatomical gift programs at different teaching hospitals or universities. Um, so part of my workshop teaching is also sometimes I meet with groups of family members and friends that would like to care for their own. So there's deciding your values and wishes about nature and Mother Earth, and then there's deciding your values and wishes about how you want to be cared for. And then there's the whole thought process about grief and what that looks like. And so part of what draws people into home burial is wanting to be more hands-on with their loved ones, or as a person deciding, I don't want strangers touching my body and preparing me. Um, so part of my work in the workshops, either like public workshops that people register for, or sometimes families have me come train them at their house to shroud their loved one. We look at the space, we go through a checklist for um, our local laws and what needs to happen to prepare for and after somebody dies, and how to cool the body, how to bathe the body, how to shroud the body. And it's really a transformative, hands-on process when families tell me that, I do the training ahead of time. And I should say this outright right now. I'm not a funeral director. I'm an end of life doula, and so I cannot charge to come after someone dies and prepare their body. That steps on the toes of the funeral directors, but because they're a regulated industry. Um, and so my work is done in the planning and the education and the preparation to help people be empowered. Part of it is empowerment to care for your own. If that's something that a family really wants to do, I want to help enable them to do that. And um, so we look at the space, we look at, where is this going to happen? We've got a supply checklist. I provide a checklist of what to do the day of. We have a plan A and a plan B. Well, what if it's a really hot day, or what if it's winter in Vermont? Because we have to look at cooling the body. Some families, they have a spot picked out. Maybe they've already dug a hole for their home burial. And other families need to wait for family members to arrive, or maybe they want to have family time and a wake over the next few days. And so we look at what those wishes are, and how to make that happen with cooling, things like these ice sheets called Techna ice. Um, so so I do that, and I do workshops just helping people think about it and explore different options and ideas, and get started on a green burial plan. Sometimes I just meet with people one-on-one to do green burial consultations too, to help them think through and start to form a plan. So
I think
um,
what you've been talking about too just really correlates with,
mm,
the work, that I do and the work that, end of life doulas are trained. Holly's here. She's a end of life doula in North Carolina.
yay,
And
my
it's
home state.
it's it's about what you said. It's about, really taking the time and taking the opportunity. Like Holly teaches also, she has the workshop, A Guide to Living Fully and Dying Prepared, that
Mhm.
I do. And it's becoming aware and then documenting what your values are. Because
Mhm.
when you go through, it's kind of like, yeah, sure, I know my values. And then when you have to do the exercises and things like that, you're like, oh, wow, and so take note of that. And that to me also helps us, certainly as end of life doulas, but everybody to meet, our person where they are.
Yeah.
And, now we have a different way of listening because we've learned what's important to them and what, really they're not worried about or don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
So I oh, I
I
was
just want
just
to segue off of that and just say the main thing that I want to get across today, if because I've talked about a lot of broad things, is two things. One is if you're working with Trish on doing an advanced planning document, that you can designate an agent of disposition, which is different than your healthcare agent. And it's different than your executor of your estate. And that person can be in charge of executing your wishes. They call it a different thing in a different state. Sometimes they call it an agent of disposition. Um, different names in different states, but it holds up. It's good to document it just like your other wishes, and unless you have some really crazy wild wishes, that's gonna hold up in court if someone. Obviously, it has to be something that's legal in your state, right? And so the laws vary greatly from state to state. Um, there are some there are some states that require you to have a funeral director involved in some of the activities or all, and there are other states that don't. Um, there are some states that say, yes, you can have a home burial, but then there's a certain county that says no. So that's the other thing, besides encouraging you to think about who might be your agent of disposition that helps make these choices, especially if you say, yeah, I want to die at home, I want to be buried at home, but you take a trip somewhere and pass away, then that agent of disposition is going to have to make some decisions based on budget and what's practical. Um,
That's
but
really
but
good.
you
Yeah.
let them know your wishes and your priorities for what they can, and you can try to give them a roadmap or plan as much as possible. But we all know, sometimes things don't go the way planned. So,
Mhm.
um, so that's one thing,
So
agent of disposition. And the other thing I really want to just impress upon people is you have to look at your local laws and ordinances to decide, if you want to do home burial um, and not use a funeral director, you have to look at it. Is that possible in your town, in your state? And I'm gonna, I've given Trish some resources for sort of where to start looking at that, but she'll pass that PDF along to you.
yeah. So
Mhm.
Lindsay, I'm going to open it up for questions
Sure.
because it's a lot.
Yeah.
And,
It
it's
is.
kind of like, what did you always want to know about? What did green burial and natural burial mean to you? And what kind of questions do you have?
Mhm.
So I'll open it up. Beth?
Beth is muted.
Yeah, she's trying to unmute herself.
Beth,
Okay. Am
there
I
you
am
go.
I
There you go.
muted? Okay. So after I took Trisha's class, I did all my planning and I contacted Curtis Britch and had a long conversation with them because it was just a lot of daunting information. And I may have gotten bad information from them, but they said even if you, oh wait, no, it wasn't, no, sorry. It was when I contacted the Glover Town offices because they have a green burial site out there. And I was told that even if you have a green burial, you still need to have that concrete case. Is that true?
I think that that may be their particular rule um, in their particular cemetery. That's not the case in all cemeteries, like Greenmont and Montpelier, they have a green burial area and they don't require the concrete case.
Okay.
Yes.
And
Thank
there's
you.
some place in St. J too, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, there's I've been all over the map, and so it all goes mush in my head. But yes, yeah, so you have to sort of look place to place and see what their requirements are. Yeah.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Mhm. Yes.
And Lindsay, could you talk a little bit about, something I learned, it was a big aha, is with natural burial, without the, the case, if you will, the vault, um, the hole that you dig only has to be about 2.5 to 3 feet. Is that correct? And then, then
Yeah.
there's all kinds of going back to what you said, either shrouding or willow baskets or all kinds of things. And that, but if you're 2.5 to 3 feet, below, the animals aren't going to bother you.
Yeah. There's a lot of beautiful options,
Oops.
whether it's a simple pine box or something woven or just a shroud, and flowers around. I wish we had time to look at pictures, because it can be really your personal aesthetic too. The laws vary from state to state with burial depth. And Michelle Achivari, that I mentioned, was one of the ones that helped change the law here so that you don't have to dig 6 feet down, because that deep, there's less microbes in the soil. It's really those top layers. And so you can look up, and some states say, yeah, 24 inches from the body to the top of the mound. Different states have different ways of delineating how deep and what that is. But yes, in Vermont, 3 feet is sufficient. That amount of soil keeps there's no smell, and any critters that would be scavenging are not going to make the effort to go down that deep. They go for easy things on top. Um, and I know at Vermont Forest Cemetery, they've only had one animal that was, getting grubs off the top soil layer and burrowed down because it is warmer. There's a lot more decomposition happening. And so, but there's not animals like digging deep and, you know, taking bones and scattering them. That just doesn't happen. And there's, good data on that, all across the US. But yes, again, like check your local laws for burial depth requirements.
Pastor Larry, did you have a question?
Well, I was writing it in. The minimum
Okay.
the minimum in Vermont is 3.5.
Oh, okay. Good to
Yeah.
know. Thank you.
Holly says, I'll be hopping off in 10 minutes. I wanted to share something about brain donation and aquamation. Yeah, I'd love to hear about that because I don't know anything about brain donation. I've only encountered whole body. And yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah, yes. So this is very interesting. The client that I have actually is the wife of the person who has an unusual form of dementia. It's um it's progressive frontal dementia or something. It's a form of frontal lobe dementia, but it's not exactly the same. Dysphagia.
Okay.
So he can't really speak in a way that makes sense to other people except his wife, who's the primary caregiver, and the two kids. But anyway, what she has wanted to do, and it's taken a lot of hoop jumping to find out who would be willing to take her husband's brain
Hmm.
and specifically for scientific purpose, for scientific purposes, because it's rare. And
Yes.
she really is interested in what the possibilities could be for other people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there are brain banks, and I don't know if
Oh.
you're aware of that, but there are
Mm.
brain banks throughout the country, and the main one that it's a couple that owns an aquamation center not far from me, and you had referred to it, Lindsay. Yeah. So anyway, so he knows a lot about it. It's
Yeah.
really great when you have somebody who's linked to the funeral industry that
Yeah.
is going to have those resources.
Yeah.
So anyway, he works with Miami, with the Miami Brain Bank, and that didn't turn out to be a viable option for her. He's, he has it to where he'll transport the body to his Aquamation funeral home location. And then there's someone who is designated from the hospital who comes and removes the brain. And
Mm.
then the owner, their hunter, makes sure that that brain is then shipped right
Mm.
away.
Yeah. Yeah. So extra planning steps and
Definitely,
timing.
definitely in the planning and the applying and how
Yeah.
slow it is to get a response and to, even initiate the process can be time consuming. So if anybody
Yeah.
thinking about that, which is,
Mm.
not going to be the norm.
Yeah. Thank you,
But
Holly. That's
but
great to
Holly,
hear.
it really highlights what, Lindsay and I have talked about before, and I know, y Holly, we probably talked about it as well, is, how important it is for us in the community education, deaf literacy space is there are options. It's not like, so I went to school and now I go to college and now I do this, da da da. It's wow. We can take a minute again, if have had the opportunity, taken the opportunity to go through and think about and document our values and what's most important to us, that, then you apply it to the different options. So thank you, Holly, very much.
My pleasure. It's the little things that we don't think about that
Mhm.
can make a whole lot of difference. And Lindsay, I think it's so wonderful that you go, you not only provide education, you include the checklist so that because
Mm.
it's so overwhelming at that point in time. And I know I haven't been directly involved. I had a client that I was a very short-lived experience because she went downhill like after the first visit, and she did have a green burial. And I know that they had people in their community, happened to be a co-housing community that had used green burial. So they were able to tap into the experience of others within their community, which is
Yeah.
great.
I love that you say community because that's like one of the big things about places like Vermont Forest Cemetery or holding a home funeral is it's a community event. It builds community, and it's something that I feel like we have gotten away from in our modern world. We've lost these traditional skills in just a few generations of how to care for our loved ones while they're ailing and after they die. And for some people, it is more comfortable to outsource it and have somebody else do it. But I find that the more people sit with it and talk about it in death cafes and with friends and family, that the subject matter becomes more comfortable. And they realize that they want to hold those skills and they want to create that community. When I sometimes I meet with a group that maybe is sort of hesitant at first, but by the time we're done with the training, they feel like, yeah, yes, we can take care of our own, and they feel connected to their ancestors by being able to do this, and they feel like they're really honoring their loved one by being able to hold a home funeral or help them carry out their green burial wishes. Some green burial sites or natural burial sites in cemeteries allow, people to come and partake too. Maybe for you, your comfort zone is just helping to put some soil on the grave. You have to decide, are you the type of person that would love to learn how to shroud and offer that as a gift to your community? Or are you more comfortable, you've got the strength to help be a pallbearer? And so thinking about, as you're planning your funeral or your end of life wishes, who in your life, and sometimes people tell me, like, I was surprised, like my friend heard, I was scared to ask anybody if they wanted to shroud me, but once they heard what I wanted to do, they really stepped up and like surprised me and want to do this. And maybe you're comfortable being the person that gets the permit and drives your friend to the cemetery. That's going to save them thousands of dollars paying a funeral director. And again, you got to check your state, because some states you can do that, some states you can't. But so it's worth a look, just to have these conversations with your friends and start to look into it. And so nice to meet you, Holly. Yeah, and it can be an amazing way of building a community of care around death. So yes,
For
Beth.
sure.
Um, can you hear me, Lindsay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So my big concern is, what if you die in the winter? I know with the conventional, or I forget how you called it, burial, you have to wait until the ground unfreezes. Can you be buried in a natural way or a green way during the winter?
Yes, again, that's going to go back to if a particular cemetery has rules. I know, for instance, Vermont Forest Cemetery in Roxbury, they do winter burials. They have the equipment and they do it. But I know like Greenmount in Montpelier, I don't think does. And so sometimes you have to pay a funeral director to store your body for a few months. If you're planning a home burial, there are ways to deal with that, whether it's making a area and before the season starts and putting hay bales down to keep the frost line, or burning a certain area, except right now it's very dry, so it would not be safe to burn. But you could burn to sort of break the frost line, or maybe you've got a friend with a tractor that can break the frost barrier and dig down. Some people that are anticipating it go on and dig the site and tarp the soil. So there are definitely ways to do it. And yeah, unfortunately, some cemeteries just don't have the big equipment. They're small little town cemeteries that can't dig the holes in the winter. So
How do you have a home burial? Like, I live here now, but after I die, I'm guessing that my executors will sell the house. So can you only have a home burial when you know that your property is going to stay within the family for generations?
that's a great question. To do a home burial, you have to own the land outright. So you can't be renting. But when you decide in Vermont to do a home burial, you have to check in with the town clerk and see what they require as far as documentation for where it is. Sometimes they say you need to have a surveyor and they enter it into the town documents on your property. Some of them say, just give us GPS coordinates. So you have to check in there. And then I really recommend that people go ahead and put an easement on their land. And so you don't have to know that you're going to be, the property is going to be in the family for generations, because things change. But whoever buys the property obviously needs to be aware that it's there and that you have a right of way for friends and family to come visit your grave. And so obviously picking out the site is important, not right outside the kitchen window. You want to have privacy for if the land sells and people want to come visit, that it's not right outside the kitchen window of the new people. So
Really interesting. Thank you for that.
yeah.
Hmm.
Pastor Larry, did I see you bring something into your room?
You are very observant. Well, you mentioned willow. Did I hear you say willow?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is where I'm going to end up.
Oh, I love it.
Got my name
Beautiful.
on it. And
Yes.
my wife Sally has one. We're going to be buried here on the property.
Nice.
And this was made in England. And
Yes.
her mother's casket was willow.
Wow.
Beautiful. Yeah, and
Fun.
it has a little blue. See that blue
Yeah.
line in there? Isn't
Yeah.
that
Oh,
nice?
that's beautiful. I'm a weaver, so I really appreciate that.
Oh,
A lot of skill in that box. So,
yeah.
How big is that? How big is that box?
Probably, oh, a foot from here to here.
Mhm.
So,
And then a
how,
foot.
how do you, will you first be cremated or?
Yeah,
how- Oh, okay.
yeah. And then you have this thing here and it opens up
yeah.
and you have the little bag to put the ashes in.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And there you go.
I love that you guys have already looked. I mean, I think it can be fun. It can be
Yeah.
fun to look for a container, what reflects you, or I know people that have decorated their own shroud or, used
Yeah.
paint. England reminds me that they have a lot of cardboard caskets over there, and you can have special printing of things on there, or have friends and family come and decorate. They can look quite nice. They're not quite as common here. Some funeral homes have access. I also wanted to give a tip that you are allowed to do your own container, just like Lawrence has. Funeral homes can't turn down if if you've gotten your own container somewhere else. So sometimes it works to shop around and find something that really, reflects you. Yes, Janice.
So for something like that, where somebody is cremated and has their own container, do they still need to go through checking with the town clerk to find out what regulations are, or is that kind of smaller enough that one can just do it? Is that different than burying a body that would decompose?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm gonna double check and get back to you. I think that because it is still human remains, that you probably need to go through the same thing. But I also know that people scatter ashes. You're not supposed to do it, on public land. But yeah, so I will check. I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
double check because that's the first time I've had that question. It's a really good question.
And I
Um,
also wanted to say too that I'm a member of the Unitarian Church in Derby Line,
mhm.
and on November 16th,
Oh, good.
Acchiavati, is that how you say it?
Acchiavati,
Yes.
yeah.
Acchiavati, with Vermont Forest Cemetery is
Yeah.
going to be the guest speaker that day.
Wonderful. Yeah, she's fantastic. You guys will love
Wow.
hearing from her. Yes. Seeing the ashes makes me think about a new opportunity that I just came across. I went to a presentation by someone there's a lot of people that have ashes from relatives just sitting around their house and they don't know what to do with them. They didn't designate a place and they don't want to have to pay, to inter them somewhere. And so there is a farm, I believe it's in Pennsylvania, Farmstead Scattering that I should put that link. They offer ash scattering services, whether it's just, you designate it. They have like 200 acres because ashes, the pH is so extreme on ashes that some places like Vermont Forest Cemetery have decided, no, we don't want to disrupt the soil. Um, so, you know, everywhere is different. And so they do soil testing and can amend if they scatter somebody's ashes on a field where they're going to grow something, but they have, forests and they have meadows and different places. And they offer different levels of personalization. But it sounded like a beautiful offering, especially if you live in a big city and you don't know what to do with the ashes and they've just been sitting on a mantle. Or people, yeah, people that don't live around nature that would like to be back in nature after they pass. So yet another interesting offering. I'm writing the note to ask about the ashes on property.
Kathy,
Town clerk.
what are you thinking about?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Just listening and probably thinking Texas probably has none of this.
No, there are options.
Do they?
Yeah. Trish is gonna send you guys a PDF that I put together that and it's not even all. I have so many links and resources. I didn't want to overwhelm people. I was gonna pull up and make sure that on that PDF, there's a link for looking up green burial places in all the different states. I'm just,
I've done a few committals where the ashes were kind of spread on the lake,
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes,
like one from
confirming.
Magog, and then they throw roses in the lake as well.
Oh, beautiful.
You know, I didn't ask whether that was legal or not. I just and I had a friend uh, who owns property in Paula. He passed away, and his friend was a woodworker and built the casket for him.
Mm.
And they put that casket on a wagon. They had a lot of property, and then just went up into the woods and buried it there. That was a private thing. It was very moving, you know.
Mm. Mm.
Kathy, what part of Texas are you in?
I'm in South Texas and San Antonio.
San Antonio. Yeah, so there is a link. It's actually through newhampshirefuneral.org because the person there that started that website is, you know, like one of the national experts on home and green burial. And so she, Lee Webster is her name, has a very extensive list. And so there's quite a lot, more than I
And
would
you
have
gave
expected.
us that link about on the New
Yeah,
Hampshire.
yeah, it's on the list. Houston, Cobar, Lavernia, Cedar Creek, Huntsville, Sealy, Grand Prairie, Belton, Georgetown, Spring, and Atascosa, Texas. So they're, you know, it's not a ton for a big state, but they're
Yeah.
there. And, you know, I don't know how frequently she updates that list. So that's the other thing is laws change and you
Yeah.
know, more and more people are interested in this. And so, you know, sometimes a group of citizens gets together and talks to the local cemetery and they are able to designate part of the grounds. So that's always an option too. And then thinking about Lawrence talking about other types of ash scattering on the lake makes me also think about I've seen burial at sea options for people too, if you're really a ocean person. So you know, that I should list that on my my slide with all the different green burial options because that's, you know, you're feeding our friends in the oceans rather than the soil, but yeah,
Mm.
circle of life.
Steve, do you have any questions?
Actually, Beth had asked a couple of questions that I was going to ask, but it just occurred to me because this is Indigenous People Week. You know, Indigenous people had several different ways that would be considered green, above ground burial.
Sky burial, yeah.
Um, I don't say this to be funny, but getting on an ice floe and, you know,
Mhm.
Native Alaskans tribes, some did that. In order to be buried as an indigenous person, do you have to have some sort, is there a special, I don't know, dispensation for being buried above ground, say?
Mm.
Yeah, you're the second person that's asked about sky burial. And so I know that within different indigenous communities, laws are different if you are living on a reservation. And so I can't speak for what goes on on reservations and if they allow sky burial on a reservation. And we don't have that type of land designation here in Vermont like there are in other states and out west and in Canada. I used to live in Ganawage. So that's a really good question because I've had other people ask about sky burial. I know it is allowed in some other countries, but not in the regular 50 states of the United States. And so that's another, I guess the last time somebody asked me about sky burial, I wasn't thinking of it from like indigenous lands and you know what is designated as tribal lands because state law is likely not going to apply. And of course, that's my that's me living in Quebec on a reservation, and I can't really say in the U.S. From state to state what the relationships are with the reservation law versus state law. But I'm going to jot that down, and I love researching. I love researching. I had a gentleman in one of my workshops that really like wanted his bones to be cleaned, like what by the beetles that clean the bones, and that then his bones be kept like in a case, like in a museum, essentially. And yeah, I had to look up and like it's just it's not possible in the US. Like you can't have grandpa's skull on the mantle here because there's issues of like it's a body, so it's not property. It's a person, but they're not alive. And so who takes care of that and you know how it creates complications with how it would be bequeathed.
Hmm.
So I think
Well, that kind of leads me into my next question. It's that I started out with this question. Um, is it fair to the people that are going to be responsible for carrying out your wishes to not be part of the decision? I mean, you know, you're not going to have to do any work at that point. Somebody else is. And some of these options sound fairly involved in a lot of work. And I personally wouldn't want to leave somebody with that.
Trish, you have thought I have thoughts, but I'm curious if Trish has thoughts.
Oh, advanced planning. So as we were talking about, as Lindsay brought up earlier, is, you know, that, and we've been, you know, putting our heads together as how to maybe, you know, work together, you know, as far as the workshop that I do, but then also have, you know, the address, you know, that you need plans for after death. So yay, you got your end of life care, check. But, you know, and you've got your will and all that kind of stuff. But this is an important piece that is not necessarily built into like 5 wishes or any advance directive. So having this, you know, as a separate planning document and keeping in mind that the advance directive, 5 wishes, et cetera, used in the best way is supposed to be a tool for conversation with people that have agreed to be your agent, you know, throughout. So yes, you would have, you know, that kind of conversation with, you know, somebody that you would, and maybe you'd have to ask around, you know, maybe, you know, the kids would be like, "Phew, no way." And so maybe you find a like-minded friend that is hopefully living closer to you that would, or have the means anyway to, you know, be where you are and to do the needful. Lindsay?
Yeah, and so your agent of disposition, obviously it would be good to ask them first before designating them as your agent. Um, they're the person that you're gonna trust to think about your wishes and try to carry them out, but balance that with what's practical because, you know, maybe things changed. Maybe you had a very prolonged illness and the medical bills stacked up. So now there's not funds to get that $10,000 coffin that you always wanted. Maybe they're gonna have to decide on something else. But I agree, Steve, that it is a bit more hands-on and involved if you're asking friends to hold a home funeral and prepare your body and shroud it. There are funeral directors that are willing to shroud a body too. Um, some of them have green burial packages, and others don't. It's interesting when I've called around before to see, you know, because with one of my clients, yeah, we're looking at plan A and plan B because she wasn't sure who might be willing to shroud her. And she has had a friend come forward, um, but what if something happens to that friend too? So she's looking at plan B, which is, you know, to leave in her wishes and her planning, an option for one of the local funeral homes that is willing to shroud with the shroud that she has. So yeah, it's good to have plan A and plan B and just have someone that you trust that can make that choice. For you, whether it's your healthcare agent for your health choices or your disposition agent to make some of these tough calls at the end, because they've got to balance practicality and budget. You know, I think I already had seen generalities about how much things cost, and then things happened in my family, and it was like, wow. And now when I call, you can call any funeral home and ask for a price list. Some of them put it online, some of them don't. Um, and one of my links that I'm giving you is funeralocity.com, which kind of gives general. There's also funeral consumer alliances in each state, sometimes more than one, like if it's a big state, where they try to keep up with the costs and just making it be transparent so that people can plan and not be impacted by funeral poverty. So I encourage you to do a little looking. And decide, you know, what's a good fit or what, you know, what do you need to save up for? What do you need, what can you prepay, so that that isn't a struggle after you're gone.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, we're at 1 minute past, but yes, Beth, I'm going to come back to you. And
Okay.
and Margot, I just want to give you an opportunity. Do you have any questions on the top of mind?
I don't really have any questions, but um, I'm just loving listening to all this because I had researched, green funerals a number of years ago. I can't remember when it was or why it even occurred to me. And I think the only thing that came up was like Portland and Seattle, and that's, they said that they just, you know, the cost of being in New York and then getting to Seattle was prohibitive, forget the actual. So it's great to know that these options are starting to become more popular and more um I don't know the word I'm looking for, more um
Accessible?
yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
What part of New York are you in, Margot?
I'm on Long Island.
Long.
Yeah.
Yep. We grew up in the same neighborhood when we were kiddos.
We did. Yes, we did. Good neighborhood.
Yeah. Love the ice cream man, but I digress. Beth?
Just very quick, Lindsay, is the agent of disposition a legal document or just something that we make up ourselves? And then I have one last question. And I can take that answer offline. Maybe it can be covered in the follow-up information.
I recently found, so I think from state to state, there are sometimes documents floating around that you can fill out.
Okay.
It's nothing like, yes, you could make it up too and just put it with your advance directive.
Okay.
I did find one that was made, I think, by Lee Webster in New Hampshire, but is on a Vermont funeral page. So
Okay. And the last question is, there's all this talk about shrouding. If you died, is there anything that says you can't just put the body in a pine box that you already have, or does it have to be shrouded?
Doesn't have to be shrouded. I've met people that don't want to be wearing any clothes and be shrouded, or yes, their son built a pine box and they want to wear their favorite outfit, or whatever. So
Okay.
if you're going into a green cemetery that has their own rules, maybe you can't wear your fabulous polyester outfit. Some of them are very strict about
Okay.
that it needs to be a natural cloth that's not like polyester rayon. So
Thank you.
mhm.
And shrouding can become like a ritual,
Yeah.
as far as, being, with grieving, but also being together and, honoring, the person that, your loved one that has died. So it's just, again, availability of something that has been around since a long time ago. And, it's something we can explore. So I have, already in my last email, I prompted you all with a link to Lindsay's fact sheet kind of thing, but I'm going to send it again when I do the wrap up. So, and I've taken notes as far as some other links that you've asked for or that have come up. So I will go through that. And you can always, the good news is on Lindsay's sheet, obviously is her contact information. But one last thing, Lindsay, before we go, on your sheet, you have generously afforded people a coupon or two to participate in your workshop. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. So there's 2 coupons because of the way my website works. So one of the things is the workshops that I've given, at times they're in person, but I had requests for it to be online. And so when I did the online workshop, I broke it into 3 separate dates and we recorded it. And so it's available now on demand. So you can sit and watch it in the comfort of your own home in your own time. And think about options and see pictures. There's some history of shrouding too, shrouding in art and music, references. So there's some of the practical information as well. So 3-part workshop. And so there's a coupon code for, I think, what was it, 20% off the workshop, it's 3 workshops and I think 7 documents. So you'll get a PDF that has links for 3 different YouTube videos and a Google Drive with all the documents. And then the other coupon that I was offering was if you want to have a green burial planning consultation and think through this and try to get your wishes and values down and start to get a plan in place. So
Great. Thank you.
Super cool.
Thank you all for being here. The questions, as usual, were just great and really gave me a lot to think about. So I'm glad you could be here. And as most of you have been with me before, that I'll be recording it and then I'll be sharing it through different ways and I'll be alerting you. So thank you for being graceful lifers, and we'll see you next time.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lindsay. Thanks,
thanks so
Trish.
much for having
You're
me.
welcome.
Awesome.
Nice to meet you all.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.